Our parliament has already become too much of a political trading house. The Senate was intended to protect states' rights. Instead, it has become a magnet for single-issue zealots who negotiate the passage of their pet projects in return for passing other, unrelated legislation they are either ill-equipped to form an opinion on or care little about. Legislation is seldom passed on merit these days. Instead, it is passed because some bloc of MPs has conceded to vote for it in return for political favours. This situation is bad enough, but now the Prime Minister and the Aboriginal industry are proposing to add an entirely new bloc of horse traders, like a permanent but unelected crossbench, making our elected members even less representative. And if you think opponents to the Voice panel's advice won't be called racist, check this out. It's South Australian Liberal Senator Alex Antich politely asking Queensland Labor Senator Anthony Chisholm, who is representing the Attorney General, how people qualify as Indigenous for the purposes of this proposed panel.
But your government, Minister, is in the process of legislating, or trying to legislate, taking to a referendum one of the most important constitutional reforms of our lifetimes. And nobody can tell me how we define the category we're looking for.
I think that's an important point you make there, that we are hopefully going to be legislating this one day. And as
and hopefully you'll have some answers.
As a member of Parliament, you will have the opportunity to have input into that.
Yeah, and so I would like to if there were more information, but there is. What happens?
You're talking in hypotheticals.
No, we're not
and riddles.
talking in hypotheticals.
I know what you're seeking to achieve. Quite frankly, it's borderline racist. Some of your questions that you're putting here.
Is it really?
Yeah,
to ask the question about how someone identifies and how it is that the legislation, the framework does that in a practical, that's racist, is it?
Borderline, yes.
Borderline racist, is it really?
The path that you're going down.
Is it really? Yeah.
If that's where you want to head, Senator Antich.
Well, I just want an answer. I mean, what I'm looking for is a simple answer.
We're here. The department have given you
no answers
an
whatsoever.
answer to this. It might not be one that you're satisfied.
Well, it's not an answer. I'm not satisfied with no answer.
One that is being answered by the Secretary.
As Senator Chisholm inadvertently demonstrates, the Voice will not resolve what little racism exists in Australia. Rather, it will weaponise it. Any practical attempt to treat Indigenous people as equal to the rest of us will become proof that the fictional sin of colonial oppression continues until, before we know it, we are as divided racially as the United States, and the Prime Minister will crack lame jokes like this one.
And by the way, you know, I may be a white boy, but I'm not stupid.
Last month, Anthony Albanese said supporters of The Voice were on the side of fairness. In an address to the Chifley Research Conference, he said, quote, "The Voice will be a national achievement in which every Australian can share, to campaign for it, to vote for it, to celebrate its success, to play their part in an historic step forward for our country to embrace a better and fairer and more moral and more respectful future." Anyone who, for whatever carefully considered reason, votes against it then is backwards, unfair and disrespectful. You can't get much more divisive than that.